Two-thirds of America's largest companies, Apple, Google, Walmart, all of them, are legally headquartered in the same tiny state. Not California, not New York. A state most people couldn't even find on a map. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly why and how anyone, anywhere in the world, can do the same thing. As always, this is educational and rules change, so check the latest before you file. The very first difference will surprise anyone used to the Indian system. In India, you register with one central authority for the whole country. In the United States, there is no national company registry at all. Instead, companies are created at the state level, and each of the 50 states has its own rules, its own forms, and its own fees. So your first real decision isn't a form to fill in, it's a choice. Which state do I incorporate in? And here's the twist that catches people off guard. You don't have to register in the state where you actually live or work. An entrepreneur in California, or even in Mumbai, can choose to form their company in a completely different state. And famously, a great many of them deliberately do exactly that. So, which state wins, and why? The answer, overwhelmingly, is Delaware, a tiny state on the East Coast. It sounds absurd, but more than two-thirds of all Fortune 500 companies are incorporated there. Why would giants like that, and hundreds of thousands of startups, all flock to one small state? A few powerful reasons. First, Delaware has a special business-only court called the Court of Chancery, with judges who are deep experts in company law and a long history of predictable, well-reasoned rulings. That predictability is gold for a business. Second, it offers privacy. You don't have to list the owner's names in public filings, and a tax structure that's friendly to companies operating outside the state. But the biggest reason of all is reputation. Investors, banks, and venture capitalists know Delaware inside out, and they trust it. When you're trying to raise money, being a Delaware company removes friction. It's a kind of shared language for business. Before we file anything, there's one requirement unique enough to call out on its own: the registered agent. Every U.S. company is legally required to appoint a registered agent in the state where it's incorporated. The agent is simply a person or a company with a real physical address in that state, whose job is to receive official government mail and legal documents on the company's behalf and forward them to you. Now you can see how the Delaware magic actually works in practice. If you incorporate in a state where you don't live, say you're in Texas or in India, you simply hire a registered agent service in Delaware, often for $50 to a few $100s a year. That agent becomes your official in-state address. This single mechanism is exactly why a founder in any country on earth can own and run a Delaware company without ever setting foot in the state. Now, the actual creation of the company. You file your founding document with the chosen state's Secretary of State, often through a body called the Division of Corporations. For a corporation, this founding document is called the Articles of Incorporation, or in some states, the Certificate of Incorporation. The two names mean the same thing. It's a fairly short document that states the essentials: the company's name, which must include a marker like Inc. Son or Corp., the registered agent's details, the company's purpose, and information about its shares. Filing fees vary by state, but they're typically somewhere in the range of $50 to $500. The moment the state accepts and processes this filing, your company legally exists. That's the American equivalent of the certificate moment we saw in India. Here's a detail that ties this whole grade together beautifully. A U.S. company really has two key documents, and they do two different jobs. The first is the Articles of Incorporation, which we just filed. It declares what the company fundamentally is, and it's lodged with the state. The second is the bylaws, the internal rule book setting out how the company is actually run, how directors are elected, how meetings work, how decisions get made. Unlike the articles, the bylaws are usually kept internally rather than filed with the government. Now, if you watched our India episode, this should feel strikingly familiar. The Articles of Incorporation play almost exactly the role of India's Memorandum of Association, the MOA, defining what the company is. And the bylaws play the role of India's Articles of Association, the AOA, the internal rules. Same two fundamental jobs, just wearing different names in different countries. Once you see that pattern, company law anywhere on earth becomes much less intimidating. Once your company legally exists, there's one more essential step: getting its tax identity. In the U.S., that's the EIN, the Employer Identification Number, issued by the Federal Tax Authority, the IRS. Think of it as your company's federal tax ID number, very much like the PAN that an Indian company receives. You'll need this EIN for the practical basics of running a business, opening a company bank account, hiring employees, and filing your federal taxes. The good news is that the EIN itself is completely free directly from the IRS. If you're in the U.S. with a Social Security number, you can usually get one online in minutes. If you're a foreign founder without one, the process takes a little longer, typically a fax or mail application, but it's entirely doable, which is why founders around the world routinely set up U.S. companies. The number you see here is just an illustrative sample. So, what do you actually end up holding at the end of the U.S. process? First, a stamped Articles or Certificate of Incorporation returned by the state, your proof, like India's certificate, that the company legally exists. Second, your EIN from the IRS, the company's tax identity. And then a few practical finishing touches that make the company truly operational. Your bylaws drafted and adopted, your founder shares issued to the owners, and a business bank account opened using that EIN. With those in hand, your American company is fully up and running. And just to be clear, the certificate shown here is an illustrative recreation, not a real document. Let's put the two countries side by side, because together they reveal the universal pattern. Where do you register? India, one central system run by the MCA. The U.S., state by state, through each state's Secretary of State. The founding documents? India uses the MOA and AOA. The U.S. uses the Articles of Incorporation and the Bylaws. And as we saw, those map directly onto each other. The main mechanism: India bundles everything into the integrated SPICE plus form. In the U.S., you file your articles with your chosen state. The tax ID: India auto-issues PAN and TAN with the certificate. The U.S. gives you a free EIN from the IRS. And the local quirk? India has one national portal for everyone, while in the U.S., founders famously flock to tiny Delaware. Different doors, different paperwork, but underneath, the very same journey from idea to a registered, legally recognized company. Let's bring it all together. 1. Unlike India, the U.S. has no national company registry. You register state by state, which means your first decision is choosing a state. 2. Most founders choose Delaware for its expert business court, its privacy, its friendly tax treatment, and above all the trust it carries with investors. 3. Every U.S. company must appoint a registered agent, someone with a physical address in the state, to receive official mail. which is exactly what lets founders anywhere run a Delaware company remotely. 4. You create the company by filing your Articles of Incorporation with the state, and then you get a free EIN, your federal tax ID, from the IRS. And 5. The tidy pattern that ties the grade together. The Articles of Incorporation are like India's MOA, and the Bylaws are like India's AOA, the same two jobs wearing different names. So now you've seen it from both sides of the world. How an idea becomes a real registered company in India and in the United States. But a freshly registered company is just the beginning. To actually do anything, to build, to hire, to grow, it needs money. And that raises the single biggest financial question a company ever faces. Where does that money come from? Should it borrow the money, or should it sell off pieces of ownership to raise it? That fundamental choice, debt versus equity, is where we head next, and it's the gateway to the stock market itself. This is the market story, from the basics all the way to advanced, one story at a time. If this made the U.S. side of starting a company click, and finally explained the whole Delaware mystery, please hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and it's the single biggest way you help this channel grow and reach more people just starting out. Drop a like so others can find it, and tap the bell so the next episode comes straight to you. See you there.